Wow. And we are live.
We're live. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the first episode rebranded under Scribe of Spirits from The Whiskey Psalm. That's still going to take a lot of getting used to. If you check my Instagram just before this, I posted a little video and I mentioned it in there. That's going to take some getting used to. I should adjust my whiskey right here so that it's not quite as gapped. But yeah, hi. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Live, Love, Laphroaig. Almost went with Live, Loathe, Laphroaig, but we all love Laphroaig. If you're here, you love Laphroaig. So, Live, Loathe, Laphroaig, as funny as it was, it didn't quite fit. And we decided to go with Live, Love, Laphroaig. Like Live, Laugh, Love, but Live, Love, Laphroaig. So welcome. I'm really excited to be joined today by a gentleman who I have a deep admiration and respect for. A man who really needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him a very terrible one anyway. Simon Brooking, Master Ambassador for Beam Suntory's Scotch whiskey portfolio, including Laphroaig, Bowmore, Auchentoshan, Ardmore, and Glengarry. And Master Ambassador, you're wondering, well, what's between a regular ambassador and a Master Ambassador? My understanding, my guess is that major hubs for Beam Suntory have what's called Protectors Peat. Those are the local ambassadors who also work with the regular portfolio, but they focus on the peated whiskey portfolio, and Simon's kind of their boss. So I'm guessing that's why he's a Master Ambassador. Also, he's just an awesome dude.
Well, thank you very much there, Sam. Master, that is not a self-appointed title. I really, my title officially is senior ambassador for Scotch heritage at Beam Suntory, which is probably a little closer to kind of what I do and how old I am, being senior and heritage. I'm as old as some of the whiskeys now, so hopefully I'm maturing gracefully and sweetly. But really happy to be here. Thank you for having me on, and love this format. It's a very relaxed afternoon, evening that we've got ahead of us, and we're going to taste some great whiskeys, answer some questions, and just chat about laughing about Laphroaig. Some people might loathe it as well, but certainly there's a lot of wiggle room between loving and loathing, but I certainly do live Laphroaig, working for the brand for over 13 years now. It's a place near and dear to my heart, Isla, and the people there, and wish them the best during these pandemic times as well. They are still making whiskey, and so that's good news for all of us who enjoy this amazing spirit.
So Laphroaig, actually, Simon, I think I've told you this, was the peated Scotch that got me into peated whiskey. It was a birthday gift from my then best friend. He called my father. He's like, "What is Sam like right now? What does he enjoy for his birthday?" My dad said, "Scotch." So he went to Bevmo and bought a bottle of Laphroaig 18. And the first time I had it, I had no idea what the fuck it was. I had no idea what I was in for, but I soon fell in love. And I can't get enough.
And which birthday was that?
Ooh. That was 22 or 23, actually. So close to 5-6 years ago now.
Yeah, well, that's a very educated palate at 22, 23. Usually, but and also the 18 year, which was an amazing whiskey. It's really fascinating to see the way, and we've got this image behind us of the Laphroaig distillery in the bay, the way the whiskeys ebb and flow during their maturation. I like to talk about the barrels breathing. They inhale in the winter. They take in that big deep breath, and then exhale in the summer. and that inhalation and exhalation of the barrels plays. There's a dialogue that's happening between the wood and the whiskey.
Speaking of dialogue, Simon, I just want to give a quick shout out to everyone in the comments right now who's coming to hang out. Speaking of people who loathe Laphroaig, Whiskey Crusaders are some friends of mine based out of Texas. They're a trio, and 1/3 of the trio does not enjoy peated whiskey at all. So speaking of people who love and also loathe peated Scotch whiskey, so hi to their friends, the Whiskey Crusaders. Also hello to our friend Joe Van Nam out in the Maryland, Virginia area, who's also a fantastic whiskey aficionado and also a program educator for the whiskey program out in Texas. A hello to Kevin Barber, who's tuning in from Virginia. He says, thank you, Sam, Simon, and John.
Yep, John's back at the distillery. Like I said, it's been everybody's had to just reimagine and make sure that everybody's working safely. But the beauty, one of the things that keeps me going regarding this brand, and as many of the other brands on Islay, like our sister distillery Bowmore, is the fact that these distilleries have been standing like sentinels on the shores of Islay for over 200 years. And I have a funny feeling that they'll still be standing long after we're gone. And that's a real testament to the men and women who've been making this whiskey as long as they have been on this island. It's
absolutely over 200 years.
Yeah, we celebrated our 200-year anniversary in 2015 for Laphroaig. Yep.
Well, all this talk of Laphroaig has me thirsty, Simon. So I'm gonna pour myself a little bit of the standard 10-year-old. As you guys can see, we have a fantastic lineup today with us. We have the standard entry level, and of course, standard entry does not mean anything bad. It's a fantastic, approachable. It's a great way to start off in your Laphroaig journey, in my opinion. Is the 10-year. Then we move on to the 2020 cartridge release. Then we have, I think this one is the 2019 or is it the 18, Simon?
It's the 16, 2016.
Oh, it's even older than that, it's 16. And then I'm really excited because we also have the 25-year. Now, if you notice, normally if you've tuned in, you'll notice that I'm not wearing my usual polo shirt today. I texted Simon a couple hours ago, said, hey, the package that got lost was recovered. So thank you for my brand new Laphroaig jammies. And he said, well, let's do a Laphroaig jammy party on the show today. And I said, okay, I can't say no to you.
Yep.
Which is how I ended up barely remembering a night in San Francisco.
I don't remember. It was a night well worth forgetting. But I'm wearing my jammies too. I'll show you. Normally I'm in the kilt, but
well, don't hurt yourself, Simon.
No, but I always carry the skein do as well, the knife. You gotta always carry the knife.
Well, you have those on. I actually have Laphroaig socks on.
Nice. Oh, well, here are my socks.
Well, I have that pair somewhere too.
We're all tartaned up there, Sam.
You more than me, my friend.
Well, oh
my God.
So the 10-year, this is our standard bottling. This is the #1 selling Islay single malt. When we say 10 years for us, that means that it's a marriage of 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old whiskeys. We'll take 250 barrels. We'll marry those. It's going into a marrying tank that's got 20% of its last batch. So we're maintaining consistency of flavor. And then it goes to bottling. We add water, bring it down to bottling strength for the United States. For North America, it's 43%, 40% for everywhere else. So
now, on the topic of bottling, real quick, I'm going to jump in here and ask you a question, Simon, that I'm sure you've been asked 100,000 times already. What is happening with the 70 CL being legalized here? Will that change Laphroaig at all? Will we get more special releases? Will the core be going to 70 CL, 700 ml? Will it stay in 750?
I think that's going to be a pretty seismic change to go from 70 to 70, to go from 750s to 700 mLs. it's because it's so established here in. Hold on here.
Mike asked, "Where are the booties, Simon?"
But I think what it is going to offer us is an opportunity maybe to bring in some of the other 700 mLs bottlings, but it's down the road. But I think the way the industry is managed right now with the current bottling sizes, that we're going to stay at 750 for a while, but an interesting opportunity, and I definitely see it as maybe a way of bringing in some of the other bottlings that we haven't been able to bring in because they were the wrong size before.
Very good answer, and it does, warm my heart to know that we won't be losing that, good, nice 50 ml pour. It's like what, roughly a pour and a half. That 50 ml translates to what, like 1.5 to 2 ounces?
Yeah, it's 1.5. Yeah.
Simon, Mike is asking, where are the green boots?
Oh, Mike, they're going right here, Mike. Don't go anywhere
Good
without
question,
me.
Mike. There have been many a whiskey show where I will show up to the Laphroaig table or the Bowmore booth, and I will start hanging out and bothering Simon, and he'll pull something fun out of the boots. Either, actually, one year at Whiskey Extravaganza here in LA, he brought one of the Stillman with him, and they had a Stillman's dram in one of the boots. And then another year, there was the Auchentoshan, which I absolutely fell in love with, and I'm sad I can't get.
Yeah, the boots have been good fun. I mean, it just kind of happened naturally, organically. Oh, hey, here's the toast. Here's to us, nay like us, God damn. That translates to here's to us. There's nobody else like us. God damn the rest. Slanja.
Slanja.
So yeah, the boots came about naturally because, for those that don't realize it, when you sign up to be a friend of Laphroaig, which we can talk about a little bit more later, but it entitles you to a square foot of land, and you come to visit the distillery, and we put you in a pair of boots. So when I first started working as an ambassador, I figured, well, I need a pair of boots to help demonstrate the whole notion of the square foot of land, and I kept them in my bag, and it's a perfect container for me to carry whiskey in the bag. So I always kept one there, and it was a good place to hide some whiskey. And also, it also highlights the story of bootlegging. I mean, because that was literally the bootleggers back during Prohibition were tucking bottles into their boots to get them through customs and across the borders. So
there's a distillery in Texas, Garrison Brothers, actually, that has what they call boot flasks.
Right.
They're 37.5. Pardon me, I'm drinking club soda. They're 375s that are designed. They're kind of like flattened at the back so they can fit down your boot and just fit flat against your leg. I thought that was really clever.
Yeah. Well, we historically, I don't have one on me, but the boys in the warehouse usually would fashion a piece of copper into what they call, and apparently this has a different connotation in the United States, but it's called a dookie, and which means in Scotland it means for dunking. For dookie is dunking, and so they would fashion a piece of copper because there's a lot of copper on site. Into a copper tube, put a thread it so that they could put a cap on it and a chain on it, and whenever they were in the warehouse by themselves, they would knock the bung out of the sweet stuff, drop their dookie, or a whiskey thief is another name for it, into the cask, draw it back out, and then slip it into their boots, and then walk off. But there's some boys who would literally fill their boots with whiskey because it's alcohol. It's going to kill all of any germs you might have.
Yeah, but that sloshing around can't be comfortable.
Yeah, it's so wet in Scotland. You don't. You're wet on the inside. You're wet on the outside.
Fair enough. Oh, it's been a while since I've had just the standard 10. I killed a bottle of 10 cask strength a few weeks back, and just going back to the standard 10, it's just so lush. And there's a beautiful brine. There's smoky peat notes that we all of course get. But looking past that, there's rich butter and butterscotch, a little bit of kind of a sweet wine influence. I want to say not quite as sherry, especially because I don't think standard 10 year has any sherry. It's all like bourbon, right?
No, but you're on the edge of what starts becoming fruit notes, even in bourbon casks, because and we were talking about the 18-year prior, the 15-year Laphroaig. People swear that it's got sherry casks because those fruit notes start becoming more evident, even though it's all bourbon casks. And then the 18-year all in bourbon, suddenly it starts moving back towards those vanilla, those caramel. It's less of the fruit and it's more of the bourbon influence. But then as it moves into the 20 plus years, it is much fruitier again.
Beth Rush says, cheers, Simon. Celebrating Joel's birthday with you and Laphroaig. Miss you.
Nice. Happy birthday, Joel. Happy birthday to you. Missed you guys. They're great folks from the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society days. Those Beth and the family that ran Scotch Malt Whiskey Society really were amazing to work with. Al and his wife, and really put on first-class events. Really helped lay down the foundation for Scotch appreciation in America, along with the big whiskey fests. I love the Scotch Malt Whiskey Societies.
Let's take a step back in time real quick, Simon, because we've been talking about Laphroaig, and obviously we're going to talk about Laphroaig for the next, hour and a half, 2 hours. So everyone's got to listen to us, drone on and listen to your fantastic accent, and me kind of, with my little I talk like this half the time, and I'm talking really, really fast, and I'm excited. But let's take a hop into a bit of a time machine because, like whiskey, nothing just happens overnight. So tell us a little about how you got started in the Scotch industry. You said you've been working with Laphroaig alone for the past 13 years. What were you doing pre-Laphroaig?
Yeah, well, I started out, my family immigrated over. My mom and dad were born in Glasgow. I was born in Edinburgh. And we came over when I was at a fairly young age through Canada to upstate New York and settled there. There was a big expat Scots community there. So that's where we settled. My dad was an engineer. Engineering is a big part of the Scottish culture. And so I ended up going to school in the US and eventually took on, I had a hankering for the theater. And so I worked around the country and eventually moved to New York, got a job, did a couple shows on Broadway. But then I got a job as a whiskey ambassador through my agent for Dewar's. They were looking for somebody to be a whiskey specialist and to do an event in New York City for 2 months. And I auditioned. I had the kilt, I had the accent, I drank whiskey, I got the job. And they flew me back to Scotland to work with a master blender with Dewar's, and that was almost 24 years ago now.
You are not the first person I know. Our dear friend Jenny Wren, who also says hello, by the way, also started out in a similar manner of she was a stage performer in Broadway and off Broadway, and started doing, whiskey demos, and now she does whiskey full time.
Yep, there are a lot of us that come from that background. Andy Weir. There's Bernie Lubbers in the bourbon, from the bourbon side, stand-up comedian. Martin Daras. It's about communicating a message and getting the message across to an audience, and so that's a really important part. And so I took advantage of my background, and that's why I sing and I kind of tell. Well, we're all storytellers. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. We're gatekeepers. But I originally, as a Dewar's ambassador for a year, and then I went to work for Diageo and represented the classic malts range.
That's right. If memory serves, you were among the original masters of Scotch, yes?
Well, we weren't even masters of Scotch at that point. We were. That was like a year later. But I did 6 years with Diageo, working on a regional, and then eventually working up to a national level, and then wanted some change and was looking for more of a focus on a brand, and the opportunity for Dalmore came up, and that was with Jim Beam. So I left Diageo and left that huge portfolio at Diageo for one distillery, Dalmore, and that gave me the opportunity to work with really one of the master showmen in the industry, Richard Patterson. And so I worked with
He
him.
definitely is a showman. He's a great guy, very nice guy, but definitely a showman. He definitely knows how to hold the room's attention with his, hello, how are you? And, the swirling and throwing on the ground. It always gets everybody's attention every time. It's like, is he going to do it? Is he going to do it? Is he going to do it? It's
Yep.
part of his shtick.
Yep. Well, so we've all got a gimmick, you got to get a gimmick, and
You've got the singing.
And so, I mean, I enjoy singing, and so it became a part of what I do as a representative for the brand. And it changes people's look on their face and their perception. Like I didn't come here for this, and but hey, what the hell? It's a ride. It's a bit of the mystery, and let's have some fun. It's about making Scotch fun. That's what really it is, because it's
And
been
approachable, I want to say too. Of course, making Scotch and whiskey fun. Particularly, I feel like single malt Scotch, and then people look at it and they see like high snobbery, but really it's all about the company you keep while you're enjoying the whiskey. I killed my bottle of 18 year about 3 years ago, almost to the day. Or no, closer to like 4 or 5 years ago, I think, actually. Anyway, almost to the day I killed it, a handful of years ago. But I killed it with a friend. There was enough for about 2 good-sized pours left in that bottle. And I had a friend over. He smoked some cigars. We had some Laphroaig 18, and we killed that bottle. And that is the same bottle that I should have brought with me, because that's the bottle that you signed, and so did John.
Oh, nice. Well, and you bring up a really good point too. There's as much enjoyment as taking the foil seal off and opening that bottle for the first time, as there is finishing that last glass. And I see so many people who post their bottle kill photos. I mean, it's a moment. It's a moment when you're pouring that last dram from that bottle, and it could be a moment of triumph. It could be a moment of reflection, but it's definitely a moment when you realize you finish that bottle, and there's some excitement about, well, I have to buy a new one, and there's some sadness about, well, that one's gone now.
That one's gone, yeah. I mean, it's always a little bit sad when you kill a really fantastic bottle. I bought a single cask from K&L recently here in California. For those of you guys who don't know, K&L Wines is a fantastic wine and spirits specialty store. They do some beer too, but they're really focused on like wine and spirits and like the high quality stuff. And they do a lot of single casks. I bought a blended malt cask strength single cask 13-year Mortlach from them, and it's almost gone. I bought this about 2 weeks ago, and it's probably not going to last the week.
Yeah, Mortlach is a lovely dram.
Oh my god! When we were allowed to travel, I had a bottle that I killed slowly by bringing samples to whiskey ambassadors like yourself, at whiskey shows, or putting in a flask and having a coat pour or something like that. I don't remember what I called it. Coat pour or something. There's a boot pour and then there's like a coat pour. So I would pull out a flask, make sure no one's around, pull out a flask, and pour a little bit into a glass for somebody. It'll be a 25-year-old single cask Mortlach.
Yeah. Well, sharing is such a big part of the Scotch experience, and I think that's what we all love to do, whether we're promoting it, we're selling it, or we're just sitting down with friends and enjoying it and enjoying good banter,
So, Simon, speaking of with friends and good banter, there's a lot of requests in the comments for a wee bit of song.
Oh, all right, yeah, let's do it. Let's kick us off. So, we were talking about this being kind of a pajama party. So I was thinking about sleep and dreams, and so there's this song that it's kind of, for me, I've turned it into what I call John Campbell's dream. John Campbell, for those who don't know, is our distillery manager. And he just celebrated 25 years at Laphroaig.
Wow.
So the 25-year that we're tasting, he was first made when he first started making Laphroaig 25 years ago. So this, I call it John Campbell's dream. It goes like this. I dreamt a dream the other night. Isla's away, my John. Peat burning bright and copper stills. Isla's away. Whiskey so sweet, in great demand. Isla's away, my John. Laphroaig's the best in all the land. Isla's away. To Isla! Cheers.
Wow, to Isla. And I'm just about out of tenure, which is maybe we should move on to the Cairdeas.
Excellent. And we're doing 2020 Cairdeas? Yes.
Do you want to do 2020 first? Or do you want to do 2016 first?
Oh, let me see. This 52. Let's do 2020 first.
Sounds good. I guess this is one good thing that came out of last year.
Yes, it is. Certainly. We can drink to that. Definitely. This is our Cairdeas 2020. It'll be bottled at 52% alcohol. So that's the last 20 being the 200 being the last three digits of the strength of the whiskey. So, and this has an older story to it. For those of you that know the Cairdeas range, we first started bottling Cairdeas back in 2008.
Simon, quick note. Everyone's saying 10 out of 10 for the singing. Beautiful, great job, Simon. Phil Olson, our local Maker's Mark rep, says swoon.
Oh, I swoon for you, Phil.
I think we all swoon for Phil.
Yes. So, and
oh
Phil.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So now, okay, so we started with the 10-year, and now what we're looking at is a marriage of two different maturations. The first maturation is a 7 years in a second fill port pipe, and that is a ruby port pipe that was originally used back in 2013 for the first port Cairdeas, which if any of you can find a bottle of it, grab it, because that is a cult fan favorite, and really very difficult to find, but it's all port. So we decided.
Speaking of old bottles, I went back to that random liquor store I texted you about 2-3 odd years ago, and they're sitting on close to 6 cases of the old packaging of quarter casks still.
Oh, really? With the woodcut image on it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some of the not quite the original, but quarter cask has been around almost 14 years now, and that's our second biggest seller. But that bottle has been around those packages, that means that's been sitting on the shelf probably 5 years, 6 years.
Wow.
So yeah, this one here, this is our port and wine cask. What do we mean by that? Well, it is 7 years in a second fill port pipe, ruby port pipe. And then side by side, we're also aging for 5 years in bourbon. And then we transfer that bourbon in bourbon cask Laphroaig for another 3 years in a Chateau Lagrange Bordeaux wine cask. So 8 years
This
with
is
the
the
Bordeaux.
sweetest Laphroaig I've ever experienced in my life.
And that's, for me, that's primarily the port. The port brings a real kind of sugary, creme brulee kind of sweetness to it. You get what you're getting from the wine cask is more of the tannic dryness, but there's some fruit to that as well.
So Matt asked a great question since we're on the Cairdeas. He said, "What year did it start, and when did you start making it?"
Yeah, we started.
Or why did you start making it?
Yeah, we started in 2008 was the first year, and it was to celebrate the Isla Festival of Music and Malt, which is it's become the Feshiel, which is Gaelic for Isla Festival. And because there's amazing music that happens during the festival as well, as much as there is whiskey presented and consumed. But you really didn't see the Cairdeas bottlings until, as I said, 2013 in America. And we've been releasing, started from 1,500 bottles initially in those early years. And we now, we bottle 15,000 for the world.
Wow.
But the majority of it is usually coming to the United States. But so this one is an amazing bottling. That port brings really those brown sugar notes to it, and then that sweetness from the wine cask. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of layers to it, and it's
There
definitely,
really are.
you know.
And I, like you, fortunate. I'm happy. I'm excited. I'm skipping words a little bit in my head. Like you, I'm fortunate and happy to work in the whiskey industry, and I get to taste a lot of fantastic whiskey, both American, Scottish, Irish, and elsewise. And there are less than 10 whiskeys I've ever had that I literally start salivating when I have it. I take a small sip, I let it sit in my mouth, and usually, the salivary glands activate a little bit, but no, like this is just full on. My mouth starts watering, and the Cairdeas release just did that, and now I'm gonna have to go and buy a case of
this. It's been a great bottling and very well received, and it's been interesting through the years to see the reactions to the different bottlings, because each year is a different bottling. And I'm happy to announce that the 2021 Cairdeas bottling will be a PX cask strength.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
So that's this year's. Last year's was this port and wine. The year prior to that was cask strength triple wood. The 2018 was the 2018. Yes.
Let me see if I can find that chart you sent me a couple months back. It's been almost a year since you sent me that chart.
2018 was.
Swami Malton Montreal said, "Did you guys coordinate outfits? And happy birthday, Sam." Yes, Swami, we did coordinate outfits. Simon sent me these amazing, comfy Laphroaig jammies, so we decided to have a jammy day on stream. But it's not my birthday.
But some of these whiskeys are really jammy, I think
Michael's asking for a link for the pajamas.
Well, they're technically not. They're technically not pajamas. This is just a regular top, but they were actually, and they're two different styles of tartan, Laphroaig tartan.
I noticed that.
I'm looking to see, But I also did bring, since it was a pajama party, I did bring a Laphroaig pillow.
I love it.
This is the bus stop in front of the Glen Eggadale house, just right across. For those of folks that have been to the airport on Isla, this is the bus stop on Isla there. So right across from the airport. So yes,
I'm loving this flavor, Simon.
It's great, and definitely our whiskeys are whiskeys that you want to spend some time with. I think you were talking about that earlier as well. It takes a minimum of 3 years, but we've got 10-year whiskeys, we've got 25-year whiskeys. We ask that you take more than 25 seconds to enjoy it. And you find.
So you're telling me I shouldn't shoot the 25 then?
Yeah, no, we're not doing shots of 25.
Don't worry, I was only kidding.
Yeah, but I have to say we did, and I'm trying to remember what city we were in, but we did cocktails with 27-year Laphroaig, and we did cocktails with 25-year Laphroaig. I think it was in Portland, Oregon, actually. And now that I'm remembering.
Well, you'll have to come to LA and do that here then, because I'm sure many of us would love it. I was just talking to my friend Tiku, who was with me at the Raymond, one of your last trips here a couple of years back.
The Raymond.
And he was telling me, do you remember when they poured us to 27? I'm like, no, I don't. Yeah, I was driving that day, so that's kind of scary. So, I didn't have anything.
Yeah, the Raymond's a great bar restaurant, and I hope they're still doing well. I'm not sure. It's hard to know.
I believe they're open and functioning because they have that whole outdoor little patio right there. So I think they're good to go.
Well, that's fantastic. I send my best to the Raymond folks at the Raymond, and thank you so much for your support. And with that said, everybody go out when you can, do it safely, safe distance and all that, but please go out and visit your bars, your favorite bars and restaurants when you can. We need to give them their support and help them stay whiskey afloat.
Absolutely. Support small business if you can. Order directly from the restaurant. Avoid Grubhub, DoorDash, Postmates, Uber Eats, all that stuff. If you can and you feel safe, go out, dine out on the patio, or, order to go and pick it up curbside. Definitely right now more than ever, speaking of someone whose bar has been closed for almost an entire year now, we could use your support.
That's almost enough time to write a book.
So I actually wrote that book when I left my prior job at the Beverly Hills bar while I was working at the Santa Monica location at the Daily Pine.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's a great to have in the library, to have the basics.
Simon mentioned it. If you want to purchase a copy of my book, go to my website. It'll all come signed from me, and it's the best way to support and make sure that the most amount of money goes into my pockets. Help me buy more delicious whiskey.
Any other questions out there, Sam?
Yes, actually. Mike Vacheresse, sorry if I butchered your name, Mike, said, how many barrels go to a typical cartridge release?
Yeah, and that's Mike Vacheresse, and he is with the Travel Bar in Brooklyn, New York. Another great account. And
a fantastic account, a favorite of our friends over at Drammers Club.
Yes, they just did one. They just did a live event from Travel Bar to support Drammers to support Travel Bar. So yeah, in terms of the barrels, as I mentioned, the early years we were looking at 1,500 bottles. So that would have been in those earlier years. That would have been, I would say, probably 10, 15 barrels. And then we are doing larger portions now, larger allocations due to the fact that it's become as popular as it's become. The cartridge bottlings are now one of the fan favorites, but it's still a limited bottling. So buy them when you can, where you can, because once they're gone each year, that's it. You're not going to see it again.
So just a quick shout out, since he did mention the name of the bar. If you're in Brooklyn or near Brooklyn and you feel safe, go support Mike at Travel Bar. They have an amazing whiskey selection, both American, Scotch, Irish, and otherwise. They're big fans and friends to one of the founders of the Germans Club, Mr. Charlie Prince, who's a friend and whiskey drinking buddy of mine. And I definitely will be going when I go to New York and I take a trip up to Brooklyn. Or is it down to Brooklyn? I don't know the boroughs.
It is south of Manhattan.
Edwin, our local Laphroaig Victor the Pete, said the Raven is doing great, and they have a bottle of the 30-year Ian Hunter.
Excellent. Well, that's good news. So we should.
The Daily Pint has a bottle sitting, sealed, in a glass cabinet, waiting for someone to order it when we reopen.
So the 30-year Ian Hunter pays tribute to the man, the myth, the legend, Ian Hunter, who is really responsible for the Laphroaig distillery in its current state, in its current the way it was constructed. It was really the early years in the 1920s. Ian Hunter expanded the distillery, and he also traveled the United States. He traveled globally, but he traveled to America and came to Kentucky and discovered bourbon barrels for the first time, and this was in the early part of the 1900s. And as a result, that's why we use bourbon barrels as much as we do at Laphroaig, because he liked the way the bourbon barrels highlighted the smoke element of our whiskey. Sherry casks tend to cut some of that smoke a little bit more, so that he liked the way the bourbon barrels really featured the smoke element. And he also took on a young lady by the name of Bessie Williamson, who eventually became managing director in 1954 and ran the distillery until 1967. So it was the efforts of Ian Hunter, who was the last of the Johnston clan to work at Laphroaig. Because of his efforts, we are celebrating his contributions to the Laphroaig distillery with a bottling called the Ian Hunter 30-year, and it comes in a number of books. And if I this is one of them here, and it comes in. Oh my God, the bottle's gone! But it's a beautiful package, and it's all about the story of Laphroaig. And each year we're doing different maturations. The first year was all bourbon, and the second book, last year's bottling was sherry, really lovely bottling. And we haven't released book number 3 yet, but there's a series of 5 books are being released of 30-year, paying tribute to Ian Hunter.
Beautiful. So, I just realized as you're talking over about the history, we've talked about the liquid and the current lineup a little bit and a little bit of past releases, but we haven't talked about the history of the distillery. And it's one of the most famous distilleries on Islay. I think we'd be doing a disservice to Laphroaig if we didn't talk a little bit more about its history and how it got started. And also, what the fuck does Laphroaig even mean in English?
Well, it's not English. That's the key.
Yes, I know it's not English. It's Scots Gaelic. But what is the rough English transliteration is my question.
Yeah, it's a Gaelic for the and the Hollow by the Bay is kind of the basic, but I think the marketing team is the beautiful Hollow by the Broad Bay has made it a little bit more eloquent. But basically, it's the Hollow by the Bay, and the location of the distillery, as almost 99% of the distilleries on Islay are located on the sea, because that was easiest to get your grain on and get your whiskey off. Also, the whitewash of the distillery serves as a beacon, as a lighthouse. The whitewash of the distillery cuts through the gray of the fog. So when the ships were coming in, they could see where those distilleries were located. But the distillery itself it was the Johnston brothers, who were a couple of farmers who come from the mainland of Scotland back in the latter part of the 1700s. They had heard that there was opportunity on Islay for farming and for whiskey making. There you see it. Yep, perfect. Thank you. And so they settled on what's called the Godalton Parish, which is the southern portion of the island. That's the same part of the island where half a mile down the road you've got Ardbeg. At the end of the road you've got Lagavulins just next to us, a half a mile down the road. At the another mile you get to Ardbeg. And that is really, that bears the brunt of many of the storms on Islay, that part of the island, because it really kind of sticks out into the Atlantic. The central portion of the island, that's where you've got Lochindal, where you've got Bowmore Distillery and the village. It made sense that because it's a protected harbor, that was the best place to start the village of Bowmore. And so that's where the distillery was started as well. But the Johnson brothers were farmers, and they had extra grain. They were making whiskey to earn a few extra pennies on the side. Plus, they gave them another whiskey to keep them warm during those long, cold winter months. And whiskey became very popular. It became a form of currency. So the country to the south of us, which will remain nameless, decided they wanted to cash in on all that commerce, and so they legalized whiskey production. And so that was the Excise Act of 1823. So that was when the stills came down from the hills and became more industrial in a way. The size of the stills grew because minimum size to be legal had to be 1,000 gallons, which you can't hide 1,000 gallon still. But when you come and visit the distillery, you'll see our spirit stills are the original size when whiskey was legalized. They are 1,000 gallons, 4,000 liters. They're not the original stills, but they are the original size when whiskey was legalized.
Gotcha.
And so they continued to produce their spirit, but the size of the stills back then were much smaller, but they continued to grow. But even by the late 1800s, early 1900s, there were only 7 people at the distillery making the whiskey. But that was when 1908 Ian Hunter came on board and started to expand the production. And as a result, it was getting noticed more globally. And he traveled globally to present and sell the whiskey. He traveled to Sweden. It's why highest per capita consumption for Laphroaig in the world today is Sweden.
Really?
Yep. The Swedes love Laphroaig.
They also love sailing Monty College for some reason. Still don't know why.
Well,
I joke, but we really did have a large amount of Swedish students coming to SMC, at least when I was there. It was a lot of Swedes. So much so that one of my favorite professors would always make, all right, where are my Swedes? Hang on, where are my Swedes?
Well, the Swedes certainly were on Islay even earlier than that, because it was the Vikings who were on Islay for a good 300-400 years. And that's why Laphroaig means the hollow by the bay. That ick ending means bay, as in Viking. Vik means bay. So you get the Nordic influence of Laphroaig. The name itself has some Nordic derivation as well.
Gotcha. That's very cool.
So they, Ian Hunter traveled to the U.S., traveled globally, and then young Bessie Williamson came to the distillery in the early 1930s as a secretary, but she had a University of Glasgow chemistry degree. So Mr. Hunter took her under his wing and tutored her and mentored her, and she eventually became managing director at Laphroaig in 1954. Traveled the world. She was a big ambassador for whiskey, and fell in love with a Canadian Scot, and they settled back on Islay. She then managed the transition to a the purchase of the distillery to Long John Distillers in 1967, but stayed on an additional 5 years to make sure that the liquid maintained, that the company maintained the standards of flavor and tradition and quality that had been established by her predecessors.
Love it. Is that why I saw an 80 Rat Ray bottling that said a blended malt known as Williamson?
Yes, that is paying tribute to Bessie. And actually, we have done the same. Well, as we've done with Ian Hunter, we have done a bottling at travel retail duty free called Bessie Williamson. It's a 25-year, which is a really lovely bottling. If you're traveling through, if and when you're traveling globally again, make sure you stop off in the whiskey shops or the travel retail shops, the duty free shops, and sample the whiskeys. And definitely try the whiskeys that are duty free exclusive. I always encourage folks to do that. Because
you can do that at the shops? I didn't know there was tasting allowed.
Yes, you can. Absolutely. Yes.
Huh.
Yep.
I usually just go and browse when I'm at LAX because I'm never flying anywhere international. But in Terminal 4, there's a duty-free shop.
Yeah, well, if you're traveling international, you should be able to sample as well.
That's very cool. I wish you could buy duty-free. I mean, obviously, it wouldn't be duty-free anymore because you're buying it, traveling from, like California to Nevada or whatever. But it would still be kind of cool to be able to, get a hold of some of these bottlings.
Absolutely. And what a lot of folks don't realize is that travel retail, the duty-free exclusives, are just that. It's such a big market that there are bottlings that are done only for the duty-free market that may never see the light of day on your local liquor shop shelf.
Yeah.
But some of them, because of their popularity, of which Laphroaig Triplewood was one of them, was a travel retail exclusive, started out that way, and because of its popularity was brought into the market. So if you buy enough of them when you're traveling internationally, it may turn into a whiskey that is more readily available, a standard bottling in your local market.
So what you're saying is, Simon, everyone, all people who are watching the stream right now, should, as soon as we can travel globally again, all agree on one bottle from Laphroaig that we want in standard retail, and just buy all of it out.
In duty free, yeah, absolutely. If you like it.
But if we buy it all out, you're telling us that there's a high chance that if we buy it all out, it'll come to regular retail.
Well, if it continues to sell well, I mean, they're watching to see if we get a great response from it, because it's an interesting test market, because we know who's buying it and we know where they're traveling to. So because you have to show them your ticket, right?
Oh,
so,
interesting.
So it's a great test market. It's to understand we know who's buying it and where they're coming from or where they're going to.
Gotcha. Now, I have an interesting and odd random question for you, Simon. As a fellow glasses-wearing person, do you ever find that you take off your glasses when you really want to get focused on a whiskey?
Well, to be perfectly frank with you, I haven't, and I know you're not frank. I haven't been wearing glasses for that long. Well, when I turned 40, my eyes started fading on me. So, and when I take my glasses off now, I'm totally blind. So it's a little unsettling for me. But
I find that taking off my glasses, somehow I can get the whiskey. I feel like it gets closer to me, closer to my nose.
Oh, I like that.
I feel like I can smell it and analyze it better. I have to excuse myself for 1 second. My dog seems like he's trapped in the other room just outside of where I'm streaming with you. So I'm going to excuse myself for a second. So please, while I'm gone for the 30 seconds, why don't we talk about the cartridge, the 2018 release, was it, or the 16? I'm sorry.
2016, but I've got a joke about dogs while you're taking care of your dog.
Please.
Okay. So two friends are out when they're walking their dogs, and Lucy has a big black lab, and while her friend Rita has a Chihuahua. And they pass a bar, and Lucy says, "Oh, hey, let's get a Laphroaig." And Rita replies, "Well, that'd be great, but we can't take our dogs in there." And Lucy says, "Just you watch and see." So Lucy pulls in with her black lab and orders a Laphroaig. The bartender tells him, I'm sorry, you can't bring your dog in here." And Lucy turns and says, "Well, he's my seeing eye dog." The bartender quickly apologizes and serves her a Laphroaig. So Rita follows in with her Chihuahua and orders a Laphroaig as well. And again, the bartender says, "I'm sorry, ma'am, there's no dogs allowed in the bar." And she says, "Well, he's my seeing eye dog." And the bartender, "Yeah, right, lady. A Chihuahua? Give me a break." And Rita screams out, "Oh my God, they gave me a Chihuahua?"
Oh,
There you go.
that's terrible, and I love it.
Okay. So, Cairdeas, 2016.
Now, actually, what does Cairdeas mean for the uninitiated? Since we didn't actually discuss what Cairdeas means, you've mentioned that it was originally created for the Isle of Music and Malt Festival, which is now known as the Shield, but you've never actually discussed what Cairdeas means.
Yeah, Cairdeas means friendship. It means hospitality in the Gaelic language. It was actually John Campbell's grandmother who named Cairdeas, because many of the Elochs, and Eloch's another Gaelic word. It means islander in the Gaelic. Many of the Elochs still to this day speak Gaelic, and it's a big part of the culture and the history of the island. So Cairdeas, and it's pronounced Cairdeas, exactly the way it's spelled. No, it's not. But just think, it's a gorgeous Cairdeas, or I'd get in a car chase for Cairdeas.
Recently, even before we had this officially figured out what we were going to be discussing today, and actually ever since the first time I heard you say it, a story from the still, I've used your joke about Auchentoshan pronunciation.
Which
So
is
having someone, pardon?
what? Go ahead, give us the pronunciation.
Auchentoshan. Say it like Sean Connery. Auchentoshan off the boat.
There you go. Or I could toss him into the river much easier than you can. I could toss him off the boat. You're tossing him off the boat. Wow. Probably that. So this goes back to John Campbell and the Swedes. He's done tours where it's a whole weekend on a boat with like 1,000 Swedes drinking Laphroaig, and that's an ugly weekend.
That sounds amazing. I don't know what you're talking about. Ugly weekend. No, ugly weekend was that time in San Francisco.
You keep talking about San Francisco. It was epic. It was an epic weekend.
Oh, it was fantastic, but I just still feel bad about it.
Oh well, regrets I have none.
Regrets. To no regrets.
To Madeira friend Sam Green.
Madeira? Hardly know her.
So Slanjava.
Slanjava to my good friend and colleague Simon Brooking.
Okay, so here's the toast. Ready? Though life now is pleasant and sweet to the sense, here's to us damnably moldy 100 years hence. Slanja.
100 years of mold? Okay, why not? Our buddy Jim Floydian said he took part in a tasting a year ago that you did. Good time. He hasn't gotten back into Laphroaig since then, but he's going to now.
Excellent. And where's Floydian writing to us from?
Where are you based out of, Floydian? I can't remember. A couple people in this chat today: T Squared, Daughter Pass Whiskey, Whiskey Crusaders, Floydian. They're all part of a whiskey community called the Whiskcord, the Whiskey Discord. Matt, if you're still in the channel here, since you are a wrench, would you mind dropping that link into the chat for us, please? For everyone, for everyone who wants to come and hang out on Discord with a bunch of other whiskey nerds and a bunch of whiskey YouTubers, I'm there and I, make smart remarks and occasionally try not to be an arrogant prick.
Never, Sam.
Now, the Madeira.
Yes. What do you get? What are you getting from this after doing the port and wine? What?
I'm actually getting a lot less ash and charcoal. It's actually less smoky. And I think that goes back to what you were saying about sherry casks soaking up some of that smoke, and Madeira also being, a fortified wine and a sweet wine as well, soaking up some of that smoke from the Laphroaig. Now, I have this little vial here, which, again, thank you. I gave my other one away, and I was like, oh, can I get another? And everyone's like, oh, you're discontinued. I'm like, well, crap. And this is, for everyone who is unaware, this is peat. In, kind of dried form, I guess. This is peat, sort of. And peat is a moss, and it is a byproduct, right? Or is it sphagnum moss?
Well, sphagnum moss is part of the composition of the bogs that we're digging our peat from on Isla. You're seeing more sphagnum moss in the marshy bogs of Isla compared to say our good friends up in the Orkneys at Highland Park. The bogs up there comprise more of heather, which is a little bit more woodier, a little more shrubbery. Think more of a, so it's and with that heather woodiness, there's a little bit more of a floral quality, where the sphagnum moss is a little funkier.
Gotcha. Kevin Barber says to take a bite of the peat. Kevin, I'm gonna pass. Because this isn't fresh cut peat. This has been dried and sitting in here since at least 2019. While it's sealed with a cork, we all know corks only do so much.
But it is clean. I mean, it is going to be clean peat. It's and that's the beauty of peat, is it serves as a filtration system for the island and for the wetlands. It's a very important element of the wetlands for filtration. It's one of the reasons why we have the water that we have on Isla, is a lot of it is filtering through the peat bogs. So you'll go to have a bath and it's a brown bath. The water's brown, but it's clean. You can drink that water and it's safe. I like to compare it for folks who like to hike and to walk. In America, you have to be careful where you're hiking because of your knees, because the ground tends to be a lot harder. Like if you're up in the Rockies kind of thing. You have to be careful with your ankles when you're hiking in the bogs in Scotland, because it's swampier, it's marshier, and the ground is squishier. That's the other reason we have the boots.
So is this edible then?
Well, I'm not gonna on the air live recommend you to eat it here and now, but it's definitely.
If I reach 100 subs by the end of the day, I'm 8 away. If I reach 100 subs, I'll try it in a separate video.
There we go. All right.
That way, Simon has plausible deniability of, look, I didn't tell him to eat it. I had nothing to do with him eating it. Floydian says he's tuning in from near Boston, Massachusetts.
Oh, excellent.
The tasting was at Julio's.
Yeah, it's a great market. He has been to Julio's or works at Julio's?
Actually, the tasting was that you did.
Yeah, great liquor store in Westboro, Massachusetts. We actually did a single barrel bottling for them. which was one of
Really?
the.
I didn't know Laphroaig did single barrels for accounts.
Well, we haven't. We stopped doing it, but there is the chance that we could bring it back again.
Whoa.
Yeah.
To have an OB single barrel Laphroaig for an account nonetheless. I need this in my life, Simon.
Well, speak to Gene at Warehouse Liquors in Chicago, or the folks at Julio's. I'm not sure if they have any left, but they did a beautiful bottling for us that has come and gone very quickly. But there may be some bottles out there. So we should.
Lyon, actually, real quick, Simon, if you don't mind.
Yeah, right.
Michael Lyon brought up a really good point about the new changes to the Friends of Laphroaig program. He said the annual royalty from owning a plot is a dram of Laphroaig which can be obtained upon visiting the distillery. Friends of Laphroaig was revamped in 2020 from lifetime status to an annualized tier-based system starting in 2021, where members gained annual access to club benefits commensurate to points earned under the program's new rules. What's up with that, That's a really good question, because I know personally, I don't purchase a lot of Laphroaig, but I'm an avid enthusiast and avid, lover of the brand. Laphroaig, I'm 99% sure is in the book even. So, for guys like me who love the liquid, but we have just so much, we buy so much that we don't want to just buy bottles of one distillery. It's not like it's not a slight. Slight is the wrong word, but it definitely seems a little of much of a bizarre change, especially since it's been this purchase once, and you have your plot for life kind of deal to this new program. Can you talk a little about that and what the change, why the change, how it'll work? I know people who had friends before and were friends for a while before got automatically bumped to a certain tier.
Yep.
But it's very, different now than it was.
Yeah, originally it was you bought in and then you got your lifetime square foot of land, your lifetime lease. But the program had become very antiquated, and we were looking at opportunities for Friends of Laphroaig and for consumers, new and old Friends of Laphroaig, to find ways to generate their interest and actually reward them for their allegiance to the brand. So it's not just buying a bottle. We could say, watch Scribe of Spirits show, and you get 10 points. You go visit the distillery, you'll get X amount of points. You start off at a peat level, and then you work up to a smoke, and then the top tier is oak. We've always wanted to be able to offer more for the higher level tiers. We wanted to be able to offer more exclusive opportunities, which weren't available prior. It was only one tier always. So this is giving us more flexibility and more opportunities to for our friends of Laphroaig to gain more experiences in the various different ways, whether it be virtually or visiting the distillery, going to Isla Festival. You get points for that, and it's something that we're working on. So we're really interested in getting feedback, as it is a reworking of the program. We wanted to rework it so that to the needs of the Friends of Laphroaig. So we welcome any and all impressions and ideas for this program as we continue to fine tune it.
And I always appreciate and respect when, a brand, even one of the big boys like Laphroaig, has not lost their way, has not lost that, the people who built the brand. Obviously, there's people who physically built the brand in the distillery and who make the liquid, but then there's, the end consumer and the people in the hospitality trade who helped bolster and helped create, and Mike. I looked over my computer for a second, and Mike said, "Is Doc on top of the leaderboards?" Speaking, of course, about our friend Doc Lurin,
Doc Lurin,
who runs the fantastic Water of Life Festival in New York City every year. It's a charity festival. If you haven't checked that out, definitely do. He's also a doctor, and he's been working his entire time during COVID, so a lot of respect to our friend Doc Lurin.
Yep, good man. So, I mean, to your point, the program really came out of a necessity to revamp it. But the challenge is, and there's always a challenge, and it, is that you change something, people's like, well, but I liked the old version.
Why do you do that? I liked it the other way better. Of course.
So, but this is it's an opportunity for us really to connect more with our friends of Laphroaig. So
now, will bottle purchases still count? Will there still be booklets in a bottle past, your first one, of course, obviously there'll still be booklets in a bottle for that at least. But will bottle purchases, past the first one registered to your account count towards raising your status?
Yes, but the booklets are being phased out, and this is a challenging aspect of the new transition, is that we're asking for are people to scan their receipts.
Interesting.
To be able to register the points, and we've had some criticism about that, but it really, as we work in a smart technology world, it's becoming more and more easier to do, but that's just retraining people to just behave a little differently and make sure that they get a receipt.
Yeah. And we don't need to keep going on this point. I don't need to, keep talking about it. It was just something that got brought up by Michael Lyon, and I thought, oh, it's a good point of discussion. For me, like I said, I don't buy a whole lot of bottles myself, but I know, that I would, when a new bottle would come into the bar and we would crack it, I would take the booklet for myself and then enter that code, because it was going to go to waste anyway. It was going to get thrown away. If I didn't take it, it was going to get thrown away.
Yep. Well, it's a program that was originated by another icon of the industry, Ian Henderson, back in the 90s, and it was a very simple program at first, but it became more and more popular, and that's part of the challenges. We've just been managing the numbers. We have over 750,000 friends of Laphroaig now, globally. And that's a point of pride for us as well. We have a lot of friends of Laphroaig. I know in your market, in where you're living, Sam, we've got a lot of friends of Laphroaig in Southern California, as well as in Massachusetts and Texas and Virginia, and they are hardcore rabid fans, and we appreciate their loyalty to the brand.
Speaking of loyalty to the brand, Simon, would you like to know my only problem with Laphroaig?
Only one? Excellent.
It's too damn easy to drink. I've been sipping the 2016 Cairdeas, which is 51.6%. And I had a nice, good sized normal dram, about 2 ounces, and that's all I've got left from my sample that I poured.
But to your point, and you had mentioned that the smoke is a little less on this. The interesting thing, and this is John Campbell wanted to, the production, Madeira is an island off the coast of Africa, and the two main exports on the islands of Madeira are bananas and Madeira. So it's a tropical island. But they heat many of their barrels in the maturation process of Madeira, so you get a smoky quality to the casks.
Interesting. That I didn't know.
Yeah, so he liked the idea of potentially of a smoky fortified wine cask, Madeira, aging a smoky whiskey, Laphroaig. And in some ways, to your point, I think it cuts some of the smoke. It doesn't accentuate. I think but the sweetness of the Madeira being a fortified wine, that sherry kind of influence really cuts the smoke.
Absolutely. No. I mean, mm, it's almost as if it was an unpeated Laphroaig. The peat is just so minimal. And it could be that, we've had two other fantastic expressions today as well. Or that I'm also just used to Laphroaig and used to the peat that comes with Laphroaig. But, you know what? Nope, there it is. But it's not the typical Laphroaig peat. It's not the typical Laphroaig smoke. It's more like a campfire. It's more campfirey than usual, which is more the usual Laphroaig is burnt rubber, band-aids, iodine. And of course, we all say that with love.
Oh, absolutely.
Actually, I was talking to my father yesterday, and he's like, and I was telling him about this. He's like, I don't understand how that's a good thing. I'm like, it just is. I don't know, but it's a great thing. That burnt rubber iodine used band-aid from Laphroaig is fantastic. I love it.
And it's not everybody's whiskey. And to your father's point, I mean,
well, my father, bless his heart, is not a drinker.
Right.
Don't ask me how I fell in love with whiskey and ended up working in whiskey. My mother doesn't drink at all, and my father has maybe cumulatively a bottle of wine throughout the entire. Speaking of my father, you open the door. Come on.
Well,
ladies and gentlemen, my father just actually, randomly popped in, and it's his birthday today, so I'm going to bring him on stream for a second. Speaking of my father, ladies and gentlemen, this is my father, Richard Green.
How do you do?
Happy birthday, Richard.
Simon says, happy birthday, Richard.
Thank you very much.
He says, thank you, Simon. We were just talking about, how yesterday you were saying that you don't understand how burnt rubber and iodine and used band-aids and smoke is a good tasting note. And I'm pretty sure everyone in the comments understands exactly what I'm talking about when I say it just perfectly describes Laphroaig, but it's beautiful.
Well, nice. And we, that
he says, nice of
that medicinal quality. Some people have great experiences at the doctor's office.
Get back to your work.
Bye, Dad.
Nice to meet you all.
Happy birthday to you, Richard. Cheers, Slunge.
That's the first time he's done that, you guys. Normally he doesn't interrupt when I'm streaming and doing a live, but it's his birthday, so I figured he came in, he heard me talking about him. We'd let him come on to the channel for a second.
That was a sighting. That was a Richard sighting. That was. Thank you for welcoming him in.
It's actually, my father has made it very easy for me to do what I love and do this actually. We share an office and studio space here in California in Los Angeles. And I'll actually post a behind the scenes video tour sometime for everybody. But I'm actually in a professional recording studio. When I first started my live stream whiskey shows years and years ago, I was doing them, in my bedroom. They were called Sommelier sessions. I like alliteration. I've always loved alliteration. And I would always review one whiskey at a time. And I would go into the nitty gritty of it. I would talk about, legality a little bit. I'd talk about maturation. And then that stopped for a little while. And then when COVID hit, I started working with some of our friends at the Best Drink Ever to do a show there. This is called Whiskey Wednesdays. And that was a whole bunch of fun. And actually, I had Edwin on and we talked about Laphroaig. But when I started doing this, I transitioned from my bedroom, literally my bedroom, to a high-quality professional studio using a great high-quality camera, but an absolute piece of shit laptop. However, this laptop did help me write that book, so it's not an absolute waste.
You work with what you've got, right, Sam?
You put up with me, so yes. But no, like we were talking about with the Madeira cask, that the peaty kind of smokiness is still there, but it's not quite as in your face as usual. It's a little more mellowed out. It's closer to it's closer into like the 25-year, where that peat is still there, but it's had time to mellow. In this case, the kind of smoky fortified wine, a little bit cancels out some of the smoke from the peat. Don't ask me how. You expect it to exaggerate it and bring in both strains of smoke. So you get that smoky, sweet smoke, or that sweet, smoky. You get the sweet, briny smoke. But instead, it's there, but it's more of a back note, led by, some more savory notes, a little beefiness, a little saltiness, definitely a little bit of a bready maltiness. It's a fantastic pour and a fantastic Scotch. And God, I wish it wasn't so old. I doubt I'll be able to find that now. Here's my problem. Now I have two problems with Laphroaig, Simon. Problem one is it's too damn drinkable. Problem two is that all the really good shit I can't find anymore. So I'll have to settle for all the new really good shit coming out.
And that's a challenge these days, and all of your fans out there along the line, Mike and Doc Lurin and the folks who are big Scotch geeks. It's harder to find the old dusties anymore because the internet has made it much more difficult because people research it, and if they're smart in their stores, they know what they've got on their shelves, but that's not always the case. So I always encourage you to check some of your local smaller shops that maybe are not not in the forefront of
about 2 years ago, I was in Hollywood. I was hanging out with a friend who worked for an American brandy company at the time. And I parked, I was working that day or I was driving or whatever. I didn't feel like drinking. And I parked along Sunset. And on my way back to the car, I found a little liquor store. And I decided to pop in. And sitting on the shelf were two, at latest, early 2000s Glenmorangies.
Yeah.
The burgundy wood and the portwood finish. And at the time, I didn't have the money. I didn't buy them. I went back a couple of months ago. They were still there. And I bought them.
Good for you.
I paid about secondary $139 each approximately. But for bottles that I just can't get anymore, it was a expense worth paying.
Yeah, if you get a chance to travel to some of the more some of the Middle America states where it's the Scotch market is not as active, definitely check out the shops. I was down in New Orleans a few years ago at Tales of the Cocktail, which is a great
Tales. That one stings still.
And I went to a local liquor shop that was just literally 2 blocks down from where I was in the French Quarter. And there on the back shelf were old 30-year-old Laphroaig bottles. There were 3 of them, and less than $300.
Oh my God.
And I purchased 2 of them, left one for somebody else to find.
I appreciate that.
Those bottles now, the old 30-year, which is literally the old Bessie Williamson bottlings, she made that whiskey, was now it'll go for about $2,500 a bottle.
My God.
So keep an eye out for those dusties out there. There's always a great bargain if you know what to look for.
Absolutely. Funnily enough, I have a friend who I met when I used to work off premise. I was in a whiskey group and I said, what's the point of working in an off premise if you don't get, a good discount working at the off premise? Because for me, it was more than just, okay, it's a job. I'm working in a liquor store. I want to be able to get a hold of some of the good bottles that come in. Of course, within reason. I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm going to hide this in the back. No, my ownership would never have played that game. It was on the shelf. But I actually found a Glenbow 15, several of them actually at that store, up in the storage unit in the temperature controlled attic area where it was our wine cellar. But I posted in a Facebook group, and a friend of mine was like, hey, come see me at my store, come see me. And he transfers stores, and I was visiting the new store, and I was picking up some bottles of whiskey for some, cocktails. My dad wanted to make some sherry bounce. So I was picking up some whiskey, and I was about to buy a bottle of Booker's. He's like, well, hang on, let's go to the back. And he showed me some stuff he picked up, and I was just randomly looking, and I saw 2 decanters of Ezra Brooks bourbon. Like the old school, decanters when bourbon was, sold in decanters. Jim Beam has the fire truck and the ambulance and the race cars. Yeah. These were the Ezra Brooks wildlife collections. There was the Great Gray Owl and the Northern Harvest Raccoon.
Oh, brilliant.
And I bought them both.
Yeah.
Took them home with me.
How was the whiskey?
The Owl was underproof. It had evaporated to a point where it was below 40% ABV. I think it's closer to 35 now, according to our friend, actually. Another fantastic whiskey person you actually follow is Nate Woodruff, Whiskey with a View.
Sure.
I shared it with him when he was in California recently. Distanced and safe, of course. We were in a park, and, I grabbed the bottle, I brought it over, and he poured some and tried it. So that one was underproof, and I haven't touched the Raccoon yet. It's actually in a vacuum sealed bag, so I haven't touched it.
Mm. Well,
but enough about bourbon. I think we should taste some 25-year-old Scotch. What do you think, Simon?
Excellent. So I believe the bottling that you have is a 2018 bottling. And
clocking at 52% ABV.
That's correct. This is the last year of the 25 years that we've been bottling, where we're using a combination of bourbon and sherry casks. The last 2 years, we've gone to all bourbon casks.
Really?
That one doesn't give up the ghost very easily.
No, it does not.
You gotta really want that bottle, Sam. Everybody, heave ho! Heave ho! Excellent.
And to the victor goes the spoils.
So, good segue, because we were talking about the 30-year Laphroaig. Once we stopped producing that 30-year, we went to a 25-year range, and the 25 years is a combination of 40%, 60% bourbon casks that are 25 years old, and 40% sherry casks, which are 27 and 28 years old.
Is there no laser code on this bottle, Simon?
The laser code should be behind the back label.
Oh, that's why I can't find it, can't see it. And then I have to peel off the back label.
Yeah.
I was trying to date it myself. Mike, thank you for tuning in. Mike Vacheresse, Travel Bar, thank you for joining us. Glad you reopened, sir, and I cannot wait to come visit when I'm in New York next.
Mike, all the best, and thank you always for your support, and I look forward to stopping by Travel Bar. Cheers,
Evan Barber asked, when we can travel back to the homeland, is there a possibility of purchasing a long-lost, lovely Laphroaig distillery?
Yes. The distillery, once it's like I said in the beginning, we are producing at the distillery. We're just not open for tours yet, and it's going to be a measured opening as regulations ease up. But there's great concern on the islands in Scotland for for the safety of the islanders themselves. They want to try and
As there should be.
yeah, want to try and keep COVID off the islands because it could run rampant. And they don't. Most of the islands don't have the medical facilities to care for people that are exhibiting the conditions from COVID. So they would have to go back to the mainland to be taken care of. So 25 years.
Kevin. 25, please, Simon. The floor is yours.
Well, 25 years, now we're really backing off on the smoke. And those fruit notes now are coming to the fore. Not as heavily fruity as you're going to find with like our sister distillery, Bowmore, because of the way we malt our barley at Laphroaig versus malting it at Bowmore, as well as we're using more bourbon casks versus sherry casks at Laphroaig. This is a higher proportion of bourbon barrels, so not as fruit, but it's there. But it really, the taste experience now with 25 years, I mentioned the bay, which you can see below us here on the screen. It's a calm day on the bay. And so this whiskey is like that calm day. The flavors are lapping at the shore much slower, rather than if it's a 10-year Laphroaig, it's a force 10 gale and it's in your face. And so many flavors are coming at you so quickly, it's a lot of times it's hard to distinguish those flavors. But this is really soft and gentle. Yes,
Very
you can have a soft and gentle Laphroaig.
So it's not an oxymoron.
No, not at all. So let's have a toast. So there are these big hairy beasts that run about the island with horns. Do you know what we call them? It's called a coo, a hairy coo, or a hairy cow. So this is John Campbell's favorite toast. On yonder hill, there stood a coo. It's not there new. It must have moved. Cheers. Now take whatever whiskey you have in hand.
There we go.
Nice ring. Take whatever whiskey you have in hand, folks. Hold it in your mouth and let it just give it a swirl. Hold it, swirl, hold it, swirl, hold it, swirl, and then release.
The black pepper really shows up well in this, along with a little bit of cayenne, actually. It gives me kind of a burning gum feeling, which, again, not a bad thing. I find with a lot of high-proof bourbons, for instance, I get a numb gum, which I like. I don't often get a burning gum. That just tells you how bad my gingivitis is, though. A little self-deprecating humor. If you can't laugh at yourself, then who can you laugh at, right, Simon?
Absolutely. So,
please.
and I get some. There's some mint notes for me. There's some menthol on this. Now, depending on the strength, yours is at 51 too.
No, mine's 52.
Oh, it's a 52.
52.
So you may want to add a couple of drops of water to it to open it up a little bit, just a wee bit. But for me, to be able to taste the likes of a 25-year, a 21-year, a 30-year, you start to understand the diversity, that there is a range, because a lot of people think that all Laphroaigs are just the 10-year. It's big, smoky, getting hit on the head by a flaming log. There's a really wide range of flavors. Yes, peat is an essence of the distillery, but it's not always peat forward.
Absolutely. That little stream of water, it's room temperature by now. When I took it out, it was cold water from the fridge. That brought, some of it proofed it down a little bit, of course. But it brought some of the creaminess out a little bit in this dram. And, Laphroaig is a very full-bodied whiskey, but it's very uncommon that I find Laphroaig's texture to be creamy. And this is, like almost a heavy cream. It's kind of in between, like, standard milk and, like heavy cream. So it's kind of like a half and half in texture.
So your texture, yeah, it's pulling. What you're getting is more the influence of the sherry. It's pulling in more the creaminess of the sherry.
Now, what kind of sherry do you use for this?
This is Oloroso.
Oloroso.
Yep.
Speaking of cream and sherry, will there be a cream sherry finished Laphroaig anytime soon?
A cream sherry, like
Harvey's Bristol cream?
Say again?
Something like Harvey's Bristol cream.
Right. Our sister blended distillery, blended Scotch, Teachers Highland Cream. We are a big contributor to the Highland Cream recipe, Teachers. It has a high percentage of Ardmore, which is a peated Highland, but that cream, the name cream in the Scotch industry came from the fact of the success of the sherry industry. They were comparing many of their sherries to milk and to cream. You could get sherry milk, you could get sherry cream. And so Teachers took that idea from the sherry industry and created Teachers Highland Cream, which is to infer that it is a very high quality. There's obviously no cream, no milk in the recipe, but it's about mouthfeel, and it's about marrying those sherry casks to bring that creamy quality to the whiskey. You're getting more of the oils texture from those sherry casks. So
that brings up an interesting, question in my brain, Simon, if I may. There's obviously bourbon cream and there's Irish cream. Will there be, Scottish cream? A cream liqueur?
Yeah.
And what would it take to get a peated cream liqueur?
Yes. Well, one of our sister distilleries, Auchentoshan, which we were talking about before, I'm not sure if they still have it on their shelves at the distillery, but they produced a Auchentoshan cream liqueur, which only available. It was only available at the distillery. I'm not sure if they're still producing it. Haven't been able to get over there in a year now. But a peated cream. That's a good question. We've never really thought about it because we're challenged enough these days just producing enough whiskey to sell of our standard variations, let alone to explore the cream liqueur category.
Now, I actually want to deviate completely away from Laphroaig again. I want to talk about, blended whiskey for a second, because I learned something the other day that really surprised me. Again, from our dear friend Tracy Franklin. She's been doing her whiskey studies more than I've ever studied. She already knew a lot more than me, but she knows the things she's learning. For those of you who don't know, Tracy Franklin is formerly the Glenfiddich Eastern ambassador, and then she went national for a little while before COVID hit. And she is one of the first, if not the first recipient of the Uncle Nearest Jack Daniels Advancement Initiative, which is promoting uh, individuals in the industry of color. It's helping them, it's promoting them, and it's, helping them learn more and more. I think it's a fantastic program. And she's doing whiskey quizzes on her Instagram. And I recently learned that blended Scotch doesn't have to be bottled in Scotland. What's up with that? Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know obviously you're not the SMW, you're not the SWA, but I figured if anybody would know, it might be you, Simon.
Well, it can be tankered and shipped to places like India or in other markets. It can be technically blended in other markets as long as it's being produced, distilled in Scotland.
But single malt has to be bottled in Scotland. Yes?
Correct.
So do you know why that is? Why there's that law for single malt but not for blended Scotch?
Well, because blended Scotch is the engine that drives the industry, and blended Scotch is the.
I mean, I would say blended Scotch makes up 80 to 90% of the market.
I would say yes, closer to 95%. But they can't make it without us producing and providing the single malts to make the blends. But through the years, laws have allowed companies to ship overseas and blend, not necessarily blend in Scotland. It's cheaper to produce and ship that way, but we can't do that with Scotch, based on the guidelines and the definition of Scotch according to the Scotch Whisky Association.
Interesting. Bizarre, but interesting. Oh man, Simon, this is 25 here. Actually, I was telling, our friend Edwin the other day that I had a wee sample of 25, and I poured off a little bit for a friend and left some for myself to enjoy. And when I went to go drink it, I found a crack in the container, and that had either leaked or evaporated out, but there was like a half ounce in there. So, that little crack allowed the air to get in, and over, the month or so between when I poured him the sample and when I was ready to drink mine, it was gone. So I'm very excited to be able to try it again. And also thank you to our friend Edwin for helping get these bottles to taste today. I would not be able to do this without your and Edwin's generosity and help.
Big shout out.
I know I sure as shit cannot go and afford to buy all these bottles, so I'm very thankful he would let me borrow these bottles.
Yeah, big shout out to Edwin Cruz. He is our protector of the peat for Southern California, for the Los Angeles area.
I believe there's still Joe Jameson in San Diego.
That is correct. And the protectors of the peat are Beam Suntory, dedicated. They work for Beam Suntory. And you'll see Edwin at many of the specialist events that we do in the Los Angeles market, whether it be for Scotch or tequila. He is well versed in all of the portfolios and all the amazing brands that we carry at Beam Suntory.
So when Freddie No was in town, for those who don't know, Freddie No is Fred No's son, and he is likely to be the 8th generation of Beam family to be the master distiller for the Jim Beam distilleries. When Freddie was in town a few years back, they had a intimate little trade tasting and media tasting in Santa Monica, and that just so happened to be Edwin's first day, and I was fortunate and grateful to have an invite. And CK or Katie or Brian, again, sorry guys, this is more directed to Simon, introduced me to Edwin, and we just hit it off. We started talking about video games. Walked out at the window, it was just, oh hey, you play video games? What do you play? Oh, I play that. Oh, wait, look at this. And it was funny. And he's still here. He said, good vibes.
He's a good man.
Iwan, we love you. We appreciate you. And I'm glad you managed to track down this lost package so I can have my jammies.
Yeah. So Sam, is that it? Are we done with all the whiskeys? I don't think so. We've got one more to.
Simon, what are you talking about? Is there something in the boot that I should know about?
Yes. I've got in the boot here. There's always something a little extra. We've got one more for you to taste, Sam, and that whiskey is.
Oh, hang on. I think I found it.
Did you find some?
Yeah, I think I found it. Now, Simon, what the fuck is this? This isn't something I've seen before.
Yes, you, Sam, are lucky enough to be one of the probably the first, although I think Edwin probably had a taste.
He did.
To try the new 10-year sherry oak finish from Laphroaig.
Laphroaig 10 in sherry casks.
Finished in a sherry cask.
Yes, finished in a sherry cask. Guys, this is a brand new SKU. I didn't know this was happening until today. But this is a brand new SKU from Laphroaig. And will it be core range, Simon?
This is going to be core range, correct. This is not an LTO. This is not a limited time offer.
This is a brand new core range expression from Laphroaig. The standard delicious Laphroaig 10 that we all know and love, finished in sherry casks. And as Simon said, while I may not be the first person to try it, I'm definitely one of the first, at least in SoCal, to have the pleasure and opportunity to get to try this. But I was given instructions to not let anyone else taste this. So, this is going to lock and key until it comes out in a couple of months. Simon, what's the timeline, or even anyone who's in the comments, what's the timeline of this hitting California and then, of course, the rest of the U.S. market as well?
Well,
I mean, it starts obviously usually East Coast, I believe, right? Everything, you guys on the East Coast get everything first, and then it kind of makes its way across the country.
It should be launching nationally within the next month, and certainly the California market is an important market for us. So it shouldn't be too long after that first month that we're hoping to get the stocks of this bottling into the California market.
And what are we looking at for MSRP on this, Simon?
That is still to be determined.
Okay. Well then. This was just opened earlier when I got it. I haven't even tasted it yet. Like you said, Edwin had to have a wee nip himself. So there's been very little evap and angel share and, not angel share, very little evap and very little air contact between when it was opened and just now when I opened it again. So let's dive in, shall we, Simon?
Absolutely. Take a look at the color of that.
My God. You know what? I want to compare flavor and color to the standard 10.
It'll be chalk and cheese.
Chalk and cheese indeed, my friend. Right here on my right, you guys' left, we have the standard 10-year. In fact, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to come to the camera and show you guys. So we have the standard 10 right here. It's got that dark Laphroaig color. It's nice. It's amber. It's a little maple, a little honey. And here is a 10 sherry. It is night and day. If this is day, this is night. It's ruby. It's orange. It's gorgeous, like a nice orange marmalade. In color, of course, that is. I haven't tried it yet, so I'm about to. I'm actually really excited to try it. I kind of wanted to take a nip earlier, but I ended up waiting. I'm glad I waited because this is this is honestly a real excitement. It's very uncommon that I get to taste a brand new SKU right before it launches nationally. I'm fortunate to be on several media lists, so I get to taste SKUs after they launch sometimes, but I never get to taste anything from Laphroaig right before it comes out. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, Simon, is because uh, I absolutely am in love with Laphroaig. Um, it's it was the whiskey, it was the Scotch that got me hooked on peated Scotch. Um, it was the 18 year. It's been around me for years, and that just smelling that peat of any peated Scotch, but especially Laphroaig, just fills me with joy and pride, and it's a happy place, and it's a I really do love this brand. I love the whiskey coming out of it, and I also really love and appreciate and respect you, Simon.
Well, thank you, Sam. I really, and I love what you do with your whiskey shows, and just your fervor in appreciation. You do it behind the bar, and you do it behind the camera now as well. So congratulations on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Here's the honest God truth about me, honest to Satan, if you will, even. I'm just a whiskey nerd. I work in whiskey professionally, yeah, but I've been in the right place at the right time many times. I've been very fortunate. I'm grateful for everyone I know and all the people who've been kind to me and show me around and take an interest in what I'm up to. I'm just a whiskey nerd, and that's what guides me every day. Pretty much, is I'm a whiskey nerd, but I also love other spirits too, which is why Scribe Spirits I changed from the whiskeys on to Scribe Spirits. Is I love a good tequila. I love a good rum. I cannot wait, honest to God, cannot wait to start exploring vodka. Because I tried a vodka once, about a year ago, on the still February before this whole thing came crashing down on everybody. I tried a vodka that totally warped my perspective on vodka. I'm like, wait, you're telling me this is vodka? So I want to try and find those outliers in the spirit categories, but especially in vodka. So anyway, um, I'm looking at this and it doesn't even look like whiskey, Simon.
Oh, it's definitely Laphroaig.
Oh no, it's definitely Laphroaig. I thought I would open this bottle earlier unless you sent him, a joke bottle. But it looks like diluted cranberry juice. Yeah, that's Laphroaig. I've got it. I've noticed it slightly throughout the SKUs we've discussed so far, but it hasn't been a great influence until now. It's kind of a pachuga taste, or aromatic through this. That kind of, smoky mezcal redistilled through meat, or over meat rather, meat hung in through the still. There's kind of that pachuga note, and I really find I like it a lot in Laphroaig. It works, that meaty, savory quality.
The bacon lard kind of notes.
Should we Not even bacon lard, just bacon.
Yeah. Let's have a toast, shall we?
May I lead this one?
Yeah, please. Go right ahead.
There are good ships and there are wood ships, and there are ships that sail the sea. But the best ships are friendships, and may they always be. Slanchava.
Slanja.
I believe I stole that from you, Simon.
I stole it from Dan Tulio at Canadian Club.
Well then, to Dan Tulio as well.
Cheers. Wait for it, ladies and gentlemen. He's processing. Yep. It's working.
This is Laphroaig.
This is Laphroaig, sherry cask, 10 years.
This is 10-year-old Laphroaig.
Yeah.
One of the smokiest scotches commercially available.
Yep, but you're seeing what that sherry does, you know, at 10 years. It's a very dynamic experience.
I could cry.
I hope
This
they're
is
tears of
so
joy, Sam.
Fucking good. Oh, they're tears of joy and excitement. This is so fucking good, Simon.
Well, I'm glad you like it. That's important, because it's folks like yourself that will be tasting this across the country and around the world. It is.
How long was it finished for?
It's only married. It's married for about a year and a half.
What do you mean married? Can you elaborate on that, please?
Well, I mean the finish is about a year and a half.
So we're looking at 9 years ex-bourbon and roughly a year and a half sherry.
Correct.
And this is Oloroso or is this PX?
Oloroso.
Gotcha. So most of the Laphroaig then, you know, the 10 sherry, the 25, unless it says that it's finishing something else, if it is sherry casked at all, we can assume it's Oloroso?
That is correct.
Gotcha. I mean, this color, though, if the regular 10-year is, you know, I don't even know how to describe it.
I think this is a great addition to the range. I'm really excited to introduce this to Laphroaig drinkers.
Edwin, are you sure I have to give you this bottle back? I can't just hold on to it and drink it all myself? I joke, of course, but I will be going out and finding a bottle as soon as it comes to market.
Yep, and Edwin can help you with that when it's available.
Oh, I'm sure he will.
Yeah.
If he doesn't, I'll just start texting him unendingly. I already have to call him like 20 times to get one call back, so just, you know, 10 to 12 to 200 texts ought to get a response. All smack talking aside, Edwin's done a great job working in this market, and he's done a great job, you know, really honoring and being true to the spirit of Laphroaig, which really, in my opinion, is sharing and is, you know, showing people the beauty that is the Scotch whiskey. And oh my God, it comes back around! I take a sip, I swallow, you know, the finish is there, it starts to mellow out, and boom, it comes back around.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Laphroaig.
I get cherries. I get
Isla is a
I get
happy
cherry wood smoke too, not just cherries. Because I get that sweet, you know, kind of cherry, not quite maraschino, but I do get cherry. And then I get cherry Garcia, actually, not just cherry, I get cherry Garcia, you know, that kind of ice cream, the dehydrated cherries you find in Ben & Jerry's ice cream. And then there's this beautiful sweet smoke. The Oloroso was bonded to the phenols, the phenolic, you know, compounds in the Laphroaig.
I think this demonstrates the beauty of Laphroaig in its younger years. I mean, we were just tasting the 25 year, but to come back to this, to finish with this, really you do see how dynamic Laphroaig is in the, we call 10 years old, early years, you know,
Look,
in the
you guys
military.
who watched the channel who watched me before, you know, other than the silly little goofiness that Simon and I had. Wait, Simon, is there another bottle? Oh, wait, what do I have here? My reactions, my thoughts are always genuine and true. And, you know, my surprises, well, yes, slightly, you know, exaggerated because, you know, it's good for the camera. My emotions, my feelings toward this whiskey are honest to God true. This may be my favorite Laphroaig ever, Simon.
Well, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing.
No, it's a very good thing.
We're not talking about this going away. We're talking about this just coming into the market. So
Exactly. No, I cannot wait to start actually. Hey, Matt, actually, just gonna, for those of you who are watching, who also watched the Whiskey Crusaders, who were live last night at 7 p.m. and actually, Simon, I should send you their video. I believe they just reviewed Lore and they just posted it today. Which is funny. I'm like, I saw the video helping my feed this morning. I'm like, really? They're doing this today? Of all days, the day I talked to you. That was just perfect. Matt, Sarah might actually like this because it doesn't have that usual peat smoke. It's definitely mellowed out. When I'm trying to introduce someone to peat, or even someone who says they don't like peat, I usually go with a Glendronach 21 if they can afford it, because the peat isn't overpowering. It's a beautiful waft of peat and smoke that dances across your palate. This is a little more intense than that Glendronach 21 Parliament because it has that, you know, characteristic of Laphroaig, but the peat smoke on it, comparing it to the regular tenure, which again I poured a little glass right here. The regular tenure is just like a tire fire.
An old friend.
Absolutely an old friend, but also a tire fire. It's that rubbery, iodine, really phenolic whiskey that you love or you hate, and you love to hate, and you love to prank your friends who don't like peat with. It's like, oh, hey, here's a Scotch for you. Just try it. Don't ask questions.
But it surprises. Sometimes it surprises you though, with those friends who connect with it. There are deep emotional connections I think people have with this whiskey.
There's a reason I still have that bottle of 18 year. I may no longer talk to the dude who gifted it to me, but that got me started on my journey, really. At that point in time, I was barely learning to appreciate whiskey. It was Johnny Black. It was, you know, Macallan. It was, before that, it was barely choking down a small sip of Crown Royal. And here we are, you know, God, almost 7 years later. And I can't get enough of this stuff. So we're actually over 2 hours now. I know you wanted to try and keep it to about an hour and a half. So thanks for sticking with me this long.
Well, we're on Isla time. Things slow down a little bit when we're on Isla time, and we like to say as we start to wrap up, I'll see you when I see you. You know, I mean,
I'll see you when I see you. This is jammy. It's like cherry, you know, cherry jam or cherry jelly or cherry preserve, whatever you want to call it. It's got that sweetness to it, and the texture, while it's not quite as thick as, you know, the 20, was it Madeira that we watered down? I think it was Madeira that we watered down a little bit. It's not quite as creamy, it's not quite as thick. But damn if it isn't fantastic.
And there's a real bright explosion of flavor at the beginning of this one. It really.
And that flavor, you know, there are some scotches, and I don't have any examples, and even if I did, I wouldn't name names. I don't want to bash anybody. There are some scotches that the flavors, that's all there is just that blast up front, and then it's, just ethanol as you taste it down. But this has that burst of flavor that lasts through to the mid palate. And once the mid palate clears, you get into the finish of smoke, of the more typical Laphroaig finish. And, it really does shine. Sherry cask and ex-bourbon really play well together. They're really well balanced together. So this, guys, is going to be a fantastic whiskey. And before I give Edwin back the bottle, I actually might, do a quick recording on it, just a quick tasting, individual on this one alone. So, Simon, before we wrap up, I have a request of you. Would you close us out with parting glass?
Sure. Okay. I have something else that I thought I'd do. If
no, please,
I can do parting glass
whatever you want.
But so since this was kind of a pajama themed party, Laphroaig party. I have a song that I thought was kind of apropos, and it goes like this. All right, I need a glass. Here we go. Stay awake. Don't rest your head. Don't lie down upon your bed while the moon drifts in the skies. Stay awake. Don't close your eyes. Though the world is fast asleep, though your pillow's soft and deep, you're not sleepy as you seem. Stay awake, don't nod and dream. Stay awake, don't nod and dream.
Wow.
With a glass of Laphroaig in your hand, you can't be wrong staying awake, right?
Ironically, I feel like I'm back at Temple. With, the songs, and then from singing back to regular verse. It feels very much like going to synagogue as a kid.
That's it.
But this is better.
Well,
you know what? The Church of Laphroaig. Let's make it a thing.
That's it. Where all your sins will be absolved. I drink to you, my friend, and to all your viewers out there. Thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to us clinking glasses with a full whiskey in hand. And Slàinte, everybody. Cheers.
Before we dip out, Simon, I want to bring up Kevin's comment. He said, "May the roof above us never fall, and may the friends within never fall out. Cheers, Laphroaig lovers. Can't wait for the new 10. Thank you again, Simon. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, guys, remember to like and subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. I'm so close to 100 subscribers, and I'm very grateful for people like Simon who come on such a small little baby channel and chat with me for 2 hours and chat about whiskey and about life and about just everything in between.
Love, life, and Laphroaig.
Live, love, Laphroaig. With an exclamation point, not a question mark. Simon, don't go anywhere. We're going to have a quick chat after stream. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much as always. I cannot wait till we meet again in person, and I will see you next week. Same whiskey time, same whiskey channel. Lunch.